Well, we still have a lot of our resources, both marine and terrestrial, are still very healthy, and it's healthy enough that it still sustains us, and we know that if we lose any of that our people are only as strong as our resources are.
It's our home, it's our territory, it's where we've been for thousands and thousands of years.
All the resources within our territory is very, very important to us. We live off the land and we live off the sea.
We're known as a salmon people, for sure.
It's our lives. That's what we do.
There's nothing that money can buy. If you lose it, it's gone forever.
Preserving our food for the next generation, that's what's important.
This is what we live for, is our fish, and it's just part of us.
We'd be in big trouble if we didn't have salmon.
I'm going to protect it with my life because it's very, very important to us.
It's here, it's healthy, and we got to keep it that way.
The central coast of British Columbia is home to one of the last great expanses of coastal rainforest, diverse wild fisheries, and First Nations living in connection with their land. There are 4 nations that have inhabited the central coast for thousands of years: the Heiltsuk, the Wuikinuxv, the Kitasoo Xai'Xais, and the Nuxalk. Their combined territories cover hundreds of square kilometers, a vast complex network of deep inlets, hundreds of islands, rainforest river valleys, and pristine lakes. The 4 nations have joined together to become a more cohesive and powerful voice for the protection and stewardship of the traditional marine resources in their territories. In 2010, they formed the Central Coast Indigenous Resource Alliance, otherwise known as SAKURA. Through the combined use of science and traditional knowledge, the nations are dedicated to stewarding these marine resources in a manner that ensures local sustainable economies, intact ecosystems, and healthy communities. Working together, SAKURA aims to be a common voice to ensure these marine resources continue to provide their life-giving bounty for all future generations.
It's a huge territory. We have a lot. We have the forest, and when you got the forest, you have the bears, the birds, and all the other animals that feed off the salmon.
Oh, it's rich with our bottom fish, our clams, our herring eggs, our seaweed.
Diverse ecosystems everywhere. Definitely each place is a little bit more different than another, from here at the Mussel all the way out into the outer islands such as Princess Royal. There's different bears, there's different waters, different changes in the winds and the waves, and so many different aspects in one territory that it's like that up and down the coast.
The territory is just so diverse. We have a unique part of our territories, and these outer islands are unique to anywhere in the world, and they have little populations and ecosystems of their own that are 180 degrees different than the ecosystems that are on the mainland, where you have these large estuaries and these 20-30 kilometer long rivers that are have huge salmon runs, have big bear populations. Every ecosystem in here is unique.
Spawned on kelp, herring eggs.
Prawns, crabs, urchins, sea cucumber.
Red snapper, halibut, flounder, cockles, clams, crabs, prawns, deer.
Bird life, seals, sea lions.
Herring and seaweed and salmon, halibut.
Red cod, lingcod, shellfish, cockles, clams, seaweed.
This is our supermarket.
This river that's out here now, only 2 places in all of North America that these huge snook are caught, and they breed right in the Wannock River there. We're very fortunate to have such a beautiful creature in our river. We have all species of fish going up this river.
This community still depends on aquatic resources, and in a lot of ways, they're still very much nomadic people. We still go out and harvest the herring and the seaweed and the salmon.
Almost everyone in this community, especially the elders, is so used to having it, all their lives. And so we continue to supply them. And we teach our young children to be a part of this now. It's a very important part of our lives.
It's all part of us, I think. It's something that we get together and do as a family.
We get lost, and then, some of the people in the village here, they can't go out and get it. So, like the big chief there, he helps the people in the village. We get a little bit, he gives it out to people that need it too.
That's things we were taught by ancestors to trade and take care of each other. And when we take that very seriously, and there's a lot of respect in that, what we do.
It's just something that's been kind of engraved in our genes, so to speak, over the generations that, we've depended on things like the salmon, for example, for so long that it's just something that we need, our bodies need and is really essential to our diet.
The number of crab have gone drastically down since the commercial fishermen started coming in, because in a bay this size, we might throw 3 or 4 traps in for ourselves personally. But the commercial guys, they'll come in, they'll throw 70 to 100 traps in a bay like this, and they'll just wipe it right out. I don't even know exactly who to call on anything anymore. Seems like the monitoring has gone down.
I was a fisherman, but there's no fish there now because it's been mismanaged by fisheries.
It's kind of the mentality. The government will take until there's nothing left, and then we'll realize there's a problem, and maybe one day it'll come back.
The herring is the worst. They kick the herring pretty good around Central Coast, and it just hasn't been the same for the last, I'd say, 5-6 years since I've ever had a good herring season. Just for home use, for like traditional herring eggs and stuff like that.
There's been huge decline in all aquatic species all across the board. Everything from salmon to abalone to herring, you name it, they're gone.
Willigans, we have not seen any willigans here for 16 years and counting.
This river system had so many willigans in it. I remember fishing just over here. One of the last runs that the Bellacoola River had.
With us losing our ooligans, for example, the health of our people has changed because of that. There was studies done on that, what we call ooligan grease, that was found that it was one of the healthiest oils there was going. I never thought I'd see that day growing up, that we'd have basically no ooligans left.
It really is critical to the First Nations way of life. First Nations had been talking to government about what can we do to halt the decline of wooligan. And so what the government said is, well, you don't have proof that the populations are declining because you didn't go out and do these studies that said this is what the population base is and this is what it was. So if this is what it was and this is what it is, it's declined. All they could say is, well, you've only got anecdotal evidence.
Well, I think the management that comes from the different levels of government, the provincial and the federal governments, a lot of the people that are involved in that form of management at those levels don't really have an understanding of what it's like to be on the ground here, to be a part of these cycles, they don't have an understanding of the significance of these resources, not only to us, but to our ecosystems and to our watersheds in general. A majority of the time when there's important decisions to be made, they're made from someone in a 3-piece suit in Ottawa. Someone in Ottawa hasn't a clue what's going on out here. That a lot of the decisions are just based on models. They're based on predictions from years ago and cycles, which has proven to be not very accurate.
Over the past 15-20 years, there are changes with the Department of Fisheries and them not being able to watch over territory. You get people are poaching and taking out different things like different times of the year, and just when nobody's here to really watch, whether it's halibut, cod, clams, just you name it.
Enforcement is at an all-time low now for the department. You know, I haven't seen a fisheries boat up here for a while, you know.
And that's why the First Nations need to jump in. We need to start working together.
After years of watching the steady decline of the marine resources, the nations of the Central Coast decided that it was time to take a more proactive approach. An important aspect to the success of First Nations marine management has been the nation's advancement of high-quality science designed to affirm and strengthen traditional knowledge. This science has allowed the nations to take a leadership role when working with governmental and academic scientists and is leading to better management decisions. The nations hope that these steps, taken in a collaborative spirit, will leave behind a history of mismanagement and lead towards a better future.
There's been a lack of science on our coast, and sometimes when we have discussions, or when we've had discussions in the past, we'd always get, you know, this information is based on sound science, and but there'd be no one out there doing science. And we found out there was gaps. A lot of people would be basing their decisions on these habitat models, or you know, kind of these guesstimates of really what was going on, but nobody was really out there ground truthing what was going on in the field. So as a part of that, well, we can't, you know, go to the table without proper information, because we also bring traditional ecological knowledge to the table, but we also wanted to make sure that we had the science as well. So we started developing our own science programs, and we're doing science around things like herring, things like sea cucumber, rockfish, salmon, bears, you name it. We're doing tons of science programs in our communities now, and we're investing a lot of time and effort in terms of this ground truthing, really what's going on out there, and how do you merge that with traditional ecological knowledge.
Traditional ecological knowledge, or TEK, is the body of knowledge accumulated by Indigenous people over hundreds or thousands of years of occupying an area. TEK is an intimate knowledge of plants, animals, and natural phenomena acquired through hunting, fishing, gathering, and living in direct connection with a particular ecosystem. It is often passed down from the elders to the younger generation through oral tradition.
Traditional ecological knowledge is really important because it's information that's been passed on from generation to generation, and you know, I know a lot of my communities go to the same fishing areas that their grandparents or, you know, their great-grandparents have gone. You know, my community can tell you exactly where you know, they catch juvenile rockfish, where the bigger fish are, where the ecological areas are, the large gatherings of things like herring. They know all of those things, and they've been out there, they've lived their lives out there, and so I think being able to bring that information to the government tables is huge. And I don't think Western science has really done a great job at incorporating traditional ecological knowledge over the years, but I think now there's been a bit of a shift, and I think people are starting to see the value of it.
In order to have their traditional knowledge recognized by government, the nations began to partner with various universities and academic institutions to bring researchers into their territories to help drive the science that could validate this ancient knowledge.
So we work with SFU, UBC, UVic, and what we've been trying to do is to take the information that we have and that we know from our living within the areas and making that carry over into the scientific community. So the importance of being able to form partnerships in order to get our TEK recognized and to get our TEK into a form that can be used within management decisions is a really big step for us, and that's been a part of what we see our role within SAKURA as, is trying to provide that bridge in order to be able to bring our traditional ecological management practices, the government management practices, and sort of the non-government organizations all together and try and figure out how we can make everything work.
There's lots of programs that are underway here. Probably the biggest scale is the Guardian Watchman program. You know, where we have 8 or 10 guardians who work full-time year-round. You know, visiting certain places depending on the time of the year. Right now we have the guardians out. They're counting salmon, and at the same time they're visiting areas where there's a threat for bear hunting. We have fish counters that are out in all these systems, getting a better hands-on approach to counting salmon and understanding these salmon populations. We have 20 plus conservancies in our area, all of which are we're developing management plans for, and You know, we have people on the ground that are, you know, collecting data that will assist with these management plans and help to inform our management decisions when it comes time to do so.
We also do sea otter and whale monitoring. We have an invasive species in our territory, the green crab, that we're trying to eradicate. We're working with Simon Fraser, and we do a hydrophone monitoring project where we're getting baseline data on ship traffic noise, and we do a SAKURA enhancement program, and that's gone very well. We've been very successful with our SAKURA enhancement program. We do a tsunami debris monitoring program.
We have a dive survey program that we get all our information from, so we basically know what's here and what's not, what we have enough of, and what we don't have enough of, the things that we have to build up on. And each year they'll start in a certain precision. Say they could start here this year, they work all along the shore and just see what's there. They have a quadrat, and they write down underwater just everything that's within that quadrat. After they finish, they flip it over, and everything is in there, they write down, goes on the computer, and if we need the information, they said it's there. So we know basically just how much stuff we have in a certain area, and things that we didn't know, we know now, whether it's with prawns, crabs, urchins, sea cucumber.
We're hoping to check the abundance of crab in the area, trying to see if we can get the actual population, how it fluctuates throughout the year with commercial fishery and the sport fishery, First Nations fishery. Through the fisheries office in Clementi, we try to take numbers on how much crab are caught locally. We do dive surveys, we do sea cucumber, sea urchins, gooey ducks, abalone, prawns, crab. Just try to keep an eye on what's going on in the area.
One of the things we're doing is monitoring our sockeye with a Ditsan sonar system. And we're able to count the sockeye going up the river. And we also do test fishing. So it gives us a real good idea of what's going up the lake.
Alejandro, yes, he's doing the rockfish study for the Coast First Nations. The idea is to check on the rockfish numbers, how it fits into the ecosystem, because they're an indicator for the marine life. They take measurements in size and age. We can get an estimate of the age through the size.
We're doing research on bears, mainly looking at grizzly bear population and the movements of those grizzly bears onto the islands and why those bears are moving. We're also doing research on salmon right now, mainly looking at diseases and different salmon, and then birds as well, especially some of the endangered listed birds such as marbled murrelets or the rhinoceros auklets.
Well, I've been studying bears now for about 8 years, and you know, finding relationships between the bears and the salmon and the forest and the people, that you know, there's something that really stands out, and that's that you know, the bears are a real vector between both the land and the sea. They depend on the salmon. They're probably the most important species in these watersheds, because you know, if there's a sound population of bears in these areas, you know that there's a good forest, you know that there's good salmon runs, and you know that it's healthy all around. So, you know, the health of these ecosystems and watersheds are really, we're able to grade their health based on the bear population, because the bear is central to all of that. The bear studies have gotten bigger and bigger than what we've started now. The whole Central Coast is doing them. Rain Coast Conservation is doing them. We're all doing them together, a joint project. So we're covering an area, you know, the entire Central Coast. So if there was all of a sudden a big, you know, a big drop in bear population, you know, we're going to know, and we're going to be able to understand why that happened. So, I mean, the data that we're gathering and the data that we're using to make decisions is really important, because it's making decisions about the entire watershed based on the health of it, which is told to us by the presence or absence of the bears and the salmon.
In 2007, First Nations on the Central Coast began to formally collect their traditional knowledge, local experience, and traditional laws in order to inform their marine use plans. These plans help the nations take a more proactive role in the management of their marine territories and provide a roadmap to support healthy marine ecosystems, human well-being, local economies, and cultural resilience.
First Nations have been working with a lot of different places, such as non-government organizations, a lot of scientists, a lot of community members, in order to try and figure out where the best areas would be for protected area management. So where are the most critically endangered species, what areas are the most sensitive, and how can we protect those? And what areas can we use for economic development?
Prior to any of the marine use plans, there was no management plan for any of these areas, so it was kind of a free-for-all. We watched all these commercial industries come in and just take all the resources, and you know, at a just unsustainable level. So we want to bring some stability to that. We want to bring sustainability to the coast. We want to make sure that, you know, there's protected areas, there's refuge areas for certain species to make sure that they thrive. We want to make sure that's going to help protect some of our food resources that our communities are still very dependent on. But we also want to make sure that these plans have a fairly healthy balance. We want to make sure that commercial industry have a place, recreational fishery has a place, and there's a spot for all users, but at a sustainable level. And I think that's the intent of the marine plans.
When we protect our own marine resources, we're setting it off not just for us, but for future generations, where everyone could be using it to harvest and making sure everything stays as pristine as it is now for years to come. And I think it's one of the most important reasons, because we live in such a special place that without some level of protection, without us working together, we wouldn't be able to have this right now or in the future.
So back in 2004, we kind of started up to start developing marine plans in each one of our communities. So basically each one of our communities developed our own marine plans, and then we sat down with the other communities and harmonized those plans, and we came up with kind of sub-regional marine use plans. And the intent was to sit down with the provincial government and the federal government and implement these plans together. And shortly after, the issue of oil tanker traffic on the coast started to ramp up a bit more. I think the Harper government, you know, felt that as a bit of a threat, so the federal government pulled away from the table altogether, and it left this, you know, kind of weaker version of marine planning on the coast. So it left it with the province. So nonetheless, you know, we were hoping that all players would be involved in the marine use planning process, and with the feds pulling away, you know, that left a huge void on the table, because we weren't dealing with some of the major issues that the communities wanted to see in terms of a change. And now fisheries weren't on the table, shipping wasn't on the table. But it was also an opportunity to really focus on our relationship with the province. Where does the province have jurisdiction, and how do we move forward in developing and implementing these marine plans where the province has jurisdiction?
And so from there, we started working with the province, who was interested in working with all the different various nations, to start working together on what we could start pushing forward and implementing under the provincial umbrella.
When we started developing our marine use plans, we interviewed tons of our elders, all of our community members, all of the fishermen, all the people who spend all of the time out there, and they know exactly what's going on in the water. You know, about where people fished, how things have changed over time, where the large gathering of, you know, ecological species, you know, all those different things we've compiled and we've put it together. And we started to zone out our territories, you know, in terms of, you know, where things are and where things should happen, where they can't happen. But we were able to merge that with some of the existing government data that was out there, and then start to develop spatial zones out of that.
We came up with what was called an ecosystem-based management framework. This is very similar to the way First Nations have managed their territories for thousands of years. And one of the key elements of an ecosystem-based management approach is to create a network of protected areas, right? And these areas perform multiple functions. One, they ensure healthy, sustainable populations. Another is they provide a baseline for science against which we can measure larger changes in climate, the effects of fisheries management, and other decisions on the water.
We looked at how to meet our food needs as one of the major things, because with a decline in all resources, we have found it harder to meet our cultural and food needs.
Each of the nations have held well over 100 meetings within their communities to develop their own community marine plans. Hundreds of meetings at the nation level, meetings between First Nations and provincial governments. And this planning process was replicated in the North Coast, Haida Gwaii, and North Vancouver Island. So it's probably one of the most comprehensive planning approaches in British Columbia. We established a robust stakeholder table that had representatives there from forestry, tourism, public perspectives, commercial fisheries, recreational fisheries. At the end of the day, the stakeholders were very happy with the outcomes of the process.
We finally got to the point where we were happy with the plan and we signed off on the plan. But one of the big pieces that's still missing, of course, is the federal government and their jurisdiction over fisheries, which is a big part of particularly our spatial planning that we've been trying to move forward.
The nations and the province have done a lot of the groundwork from a scientific perspective and with stakeholders, and I think there's a real opportunity here to take the work that's been done, take it the next step, and move that towards a marine protected area network.
We've had a lot of the discussions that needed to be had with the provincial government, with stakeholders, with scientists, and all we need now is to have a conversation with the federal government and have them come to the table in a meaningful and open way.
The nation's marine plans set out a blueprint for sustainable local economies that makes marine industries the foundation of the Central Coast economy, while taking into consideration the carrying capacity of the local ecosystems and the skills and assets of the local First Nations.
What's happened in a lot of the resource industries is you get these boom and bust cycles. So one business moves in, it does really well, and then it peters out. And so the next business comes in, it does well, and it peters out. But the problem is then that leads to a really big dependence of people on one industry, the next industry, the next industry. And what we want is we want something to be able to come in and to be able to not hit the bust cycle, because it's going to take a long time for that resource to recover. And so what we want to do is we want to manage it in a manner where we can come in and we can just sort of hit a plateau. We can continually harvest. We can continually make sure that the species is going to be there, whether it's fish, whether it's forests.
If you're able to even harvest and manage these resources with conservation in mind, you could have a more balanced economy, more consistent. There'd be more people that are still holding licenses and fishing, and and people wouldn't have to be relying on things like employment insurance and things like that. So if you can manage resources properly, it'll benefit everything long term.
SAKURA is working to create jobs for the people of its nations in sustainable local marine industries, helping people acquire the training they need for employment in sectors such as tourism, aquaculture, and marine transportation, as well as working with local entrepreneurs to help establish business plans, access funding for startup, and provide ongoing business mentorship. One of these initiatives involves acquiring commercial fishing licenses and building capacity within the local fishing fleet.
Ever since I've had this boat, I fish for the community. Like I go halibut fishing or salmon. I take some sure for my family and stuff, but I give it away to the elders. Come first, and I'll bring them up to the elder center that we have here. I've been fishing ever since I was probably 4 years old. I remember my grandfather used to put me in a cupboard in the boat. It's a good way of life. There's not enough people doing it around here, that's for sure. I'd like to see more of our housing people involved in this kind of fishery, because I got guys asking me every day, how do I get to do this kind of stuff, right? Our resources are here in the Central Coast. I don't see why they don't utilize it. I think they could be better managed so we can employ the people here, right? There is a lot of potential here. I'd like to see it survive.
We're up here in a place where it is so rich with marine life, and that we can harvest as long as we do it in a sustainable way. The fish plant, we process salmon, so chum salmon, pink salmon, coho, spring salmon. We process sea cucumbers. We're looking into various different projects like sea urchins, kelp, prawns. Within the 120 people employed at the plant, 119 of them are from here, so it's very local. By employing the people of the Heiltsuk people are able to take trips, they're able to get off social assistance, they're processing the fish, therefore that money is going to stay in the community, help out people in the community, grow businesses within the community. And we've really noticed the happy workers coming to work, people thanking us for keeping the plant open just because it's changing people's lives.
Well, this past season is a real good example. I had a real successful salmon season for the fish plant, and well over 1 million pounds brought in. I always felt good when I was delivering, and I had a young man in my fish hole unloading me, and it all begins there, and then it goes up high up into the dock, and so there's a lot of people employed.
We want this to happen for many generations. We want this plant to continue. So we need to look at making sure that stocks aren't overfished and that we make this fishery sustainable.
Well, we spent a lot of time in our community looking at developing sustainable jobs for the community, and we recognized the potential for tourism quite a long time ago. And I think back then we were looking at developing an industry that was non-extractive, and I think we wanted to be able to prove to people that you can develop an industry that's that's non-extractive and be able to employ people. And now it's been fairly successful. Now we employ 40 people, and we're training local people as guides, as boat operators, as chefs. It's a community-owned and operated tourism company. It's mainly focused on wildlife viewing, so we offer quite a few day packages out viewing whether it's bears, whales, or just the environment in general. So people come from all over the world. I mean, most of the market a few years ago was mainly about 80% was from Europe, but now we're starting to see markets from all over start to come up.
Germany, Australia, Animal Planet, National Geographic. Look what they come to see. They come to see the spear bear, they come to see the grizzly, they come to see the orcas, they come to see the humpback, the porpoise, sea lions, seals, sea otters, and all the birds that we have around here. Mountain goats, if we see them.
I think just a lot of people are, when they come here, are just amazed at what's here, what's left. And I think that a lot of people come here. One of the most common comments is that, they used to have these kind of forests and don't anymore. So I think people are still looking for nature or, just to have an intact environment like this. I mean, so I think a lot of people are amazed when they come here.
Oh, they just love my territory. Every one of them I met. You got beautiful territory. Everyone that we're coming home, all your territory is beautiful. All the trees, all the wildlife. Some of them actually cry when they leave us here. Oh yeah. That one lady I took her to Bella Bella, her and her husband. I'm just saying, we're not saying goodbye, we're just saying see you later. I made her cry harder.
The nations of the Central Coast understand that a sustainable future for their people requires healthy, knowledgeable, and engaged youth. The nations are actively working to pass on the knowledge of their elders to the next generation, ensuring that their traditional management practices and laws continue to guide marine management in their territories.
I think our tourism program really, I guess in a way it's connected to all the other programs, whether it's Resource Stewardship Department involved with we're getting the young kids involved through the SEAS program. We're also been able to merge it with some of the science programs. So some of the science now is looking at bear research in particular. And I remember when I started tourism, the community wanted me to get the youth involved in tourism. So they said, wherever you go, make sure the youth are involved, make sure you're teaching them the stories and showing them these areas.
The SEAS program, Supporting Emerging Aboriginal Stewards, is one initiative aimed at connecting First Nations youth with the lands and waters of their traditional territories, empowering them to be stewards of the natural resources through hands-on field experiences, learning about traditional knowledge from their elders, as well as engaging with scientists, biologists, and other professionals working in their territory.
We did a lot of stuff, from exploring our territory to talking to elders about our traditional stories. We had to know our territory like the skippers do. We had to know where every bay is, and all the channels. It was a lot to take in, but it was good information. Once you see everywhere, it just becomes more and more and more beautiful. The first time that I ever seen one, I was nervous. It was pretty intimidating too, because it was my first day out and I seen 10 bears, and at the end of my first day out I seen the spirit bear. I don't really think there's words to explain how you feel once you see it. It feels like time just stops and the bear's just there. Its presence is unexplainable. Yeah, I love that feeling. I can't wait to see another one.
I do bear guiding as well when I'm not doing research. I love what I'm doing. It's very interesting to find out more about the bears and like find out more about our territory, and it's awesome to be out here. Being out in our territory really inspires me to learn more about our history and our stories and our culture. I don't want it to fade away.
I never thought I'd come back after college, but now I have a big dream of coming back to come and work at the lodge.
You know, I think when it comes time for these guys to sit in the you know, on political tables or the decision makers for the community, I think they'll have a better understanding of what's going on.
I hope it could be managed better in the future there. It's not for me, not for the benefit of me, it's for the benefit of the younger generation. He's 9. He's 9 years old. He's just like me, he just loves the water, loves the boats, he loves fishing. I try to teach him lots. He just loves going into the bush, going watching the bears. He loves whale watching. He's got good eyes, that kid. He can see a whale a long ways off before I even see it. He's learning, and he's learning fast. Like I told the boss, as soon as he starts driving, I retire.
We know we're going to be here. We aren't going anywhere. We've been here for thousands of years. And we want to make sure that everybody can have that same history. It's very important to us that we are able to sustain the thing that's been sustaining us for so long.